Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. 38 weeks to go. Today we have the number one points leader, number one in weeks leader. He's our overall leader. Welcome to the show, Leon Mwotia, manager
Thank you so much.
of Why Are You Running? Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Ah, so tell me, first things first, why are you running? Tell us about the name.
So it's really funny. I consulted this like Twitter thread of funny team names, and they had like 100 of them. And I was trying to go for one that A, I didn't think other people were going to pick. B, that I thought was going to be kind of funny and relevant to me and my team makeup. So I had aspirations of having Jordan Ayew in my team.
Yeah.
That didn't end up happening. But I thought this was a really funny. I thought this was a really sort of funny and inoffensive. That was a key third parameter. Was I didn't want something that was going to make anyone in my fantasy leagues blush. So that's how I came up with this name because I'm in a lot of work pools. So I needed something that was kosher.
Oh, well done. That's a good story because I don't know if you've listened to the past interviews, but I've always referred to you. I've always been like, Leon is running away from you. So it has lent itself
I've
to a lot of easy jokes.
I've heard that. I've also heard some very friendly, what the Brits call bants, from some of the other folks who were interviewed. So yes, why are you running away with it? It's very apt.
As you've heard before, you have a target on your back, the people who are chasing you down.
That's right. That's right. I have heard that.
So tell me, so this is the first time you're coming on the show. So first of all, welcome. And
Thank you. Thanks.
you are number one, and you have been number one, I think, for maybe 6 weeks without being the number one points tally. So, what is your strategy? How are you number one without really getting all these 100 points?
Yeah, it's funny you ask me that, and when you pose the question that way, the first thing I do is I go look up my game history, and I don't just look at the points accumulation. That's an easier way to answer your question. I try and look up my transfer history. I think one of the things I learned and did a little different this year, is to minimize the number of transfers I do. So I'm only
Mm,
doing transfers prompted by injury news, like real injury news, and prompted by a player being out. So red cards, like, if I had Jackson in my squad, I know he's not going to play, then I'm open to making the transfers. One thing I've focused on is consistency. So having very high quality assets and then being patient to hold them through underperformance. I think one of the guiding sort of principles I have is players will revert to their mean. And an excellent example of this from last week was Sterling, who my knee-jerk reaction after weeks and weeks of underperformance. I think he had one blowout performance versus Luton. I think he had like 15
yeah,
or 19 points. And
yes.
then the guy was just blanking, like consistently blanking. But if you know anything about the Premier League, you know Sterling is a quality asset and he will start to return points. You just have to be patient with him underperforming until he reverts to his mean. And he did. And you know what? Someone who's going through a similar spell is Haaland. And my hope is people are going to start to dump him. And then it'll allow me the freedom to dump him and get some other differential assets.
Yeah. And speaking of differential assets, Salah, this weekend he really held it down for you. He rewarded your captaincy.
So I'm gonna give you a little insight into my strategy on those edge decisions. Because that decision, the decision to captain Salah versus Haaland versus Sterling, the decision to I could have easily captained Saka. It's a marginal decision, right? Saka could have played, scored 2 goals, and then you look like a genius if you had captained him. But in the end, he ended up not playing. Those are
Yeah.
marginal decisions, and anyone who tries to say it's down to my genius is making it up. So what I try and do with my decision making is get it down to where I would be comfortable having a 30-point swing either way because the decision is well made. And then I ask my 3-year-old toddler. So when Man City was playing Fulham, I said, should I triple captain Haaland? And she said, yes, 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 yes. She has no idea what I'm talking about at all. She just loves yes and no questions. She
Yeah.
said, yes, triple captain him. He had a hat trick. He had a hat trick against Fulham, and I think I got a 60-point haul from him,
Ooh.
and that was a differential. The Salah one, again, there's almost too much FPL information out there. There's too much information. So I'm following all these threads. I'm subscribed to a newsletter. I follow them on Twitter and on threads, and I get all of this data. And one of the data points I saw was Salah's performance against teams that sit in a low block. And this was Brighton. And I was like, look, I think there's something here. Let's try. It could have very easily been 4 points, right? Then I wouldn't look like a genius. So I try and take it all with a grain of salt.
Yeah, but in this week, in the top 10 in our group, only two people, me being one of them, Captain Haaland.
So what was your thinking? Why were you still captaining Haaland?
Oh my, I don't know how to bet against Haaland. Like, I have blind faith in him. Blind. The only time I won't captain him is if he's playing against Liverpool because he hasn't scored against them yet. Or if I am aware that the other team has a giant defender, like a Dan Burn or like a Craig Dawson. Somebody who just, I've seen that he really struggles with size. I don't know why, but he just seems to struggle with size.
It's true. Like Saliba really had him in his pocket, this last weekend. I was watching that game. And I wouldn't say Saliba is like, I mean, he's a big guy, but he's not that big. I think getting off, captaining Haaland is like, we need to get off that. It's very addictive, but there will be no differentials, right? It's very hard to, it's great if you're top of the league because then you can just do what everyone else is doing and ride the storms.
Yeah,
But it
that's
won't
true.
allow, if you're chasing a league leader, it becomes really hard to catch them, right? Because they'll be doing the same thing. So you have to build maybe the rest of the team very differently. I think Haaland has actually not been good for fantasy because he's mandatory. You can't not have him. And
True.
I'm wondering if I'll have the guts to drop him for the second half because that frees up 14 million and you can do very interesting things in your team
Yeah,
with
he
that,
can bring in
right?
Watkins, Isak,
That's right. That's right. That's
and
right.
maybe even
But
Tony if he comes back in a good form.
you could bring all those three in and then continue to build your midfield. And then I kind of want to go weaker on defense, like have some good Newcastle assets, keep my Arsenal assets. And then I still think Rodri is going to have an explosive second half of the season. I'm
Mm.
looking for a way to bring him in. It's just the money doesn't make sense right now. But if I can get Rodri in my team, I think he's going to have a huge impact.
So that's quite interesting because a lot of people have faith in Rodri, and I don't get it if I'm honest with you. But I respect all of you, and most of you are in higher positions than me, so I'm in no position to judge.
I mean, I think so. One thing I think is you have to think about there's a few different aspects to the game, right? One of them is the selection of players, what's happening on the field, performance, player mentality, the upcoming fixtures. There's a whole piece of the game that's like actually about football, right?
True.
There's a second piece that's more tactical, like what are the rules? And you have to be strategic and take that into account. How does a defender get points? How does a defender get bonus points? How does a midfielder get points? How does an attacker get points? Because those are different. And I think anyone who can marry those two pieces, so thorough understanding of the games, of the team's fixtures, are they playing European football or not? What's the coach's mentality? Is the coach under pressure, or is it someone who's been there for a while and is not worried about their job? So it's more likely to Pep roulette, like Pep, you never know who's actually going to play, no matter what the team is. So,
It's
so
true.
if you have City assets, like shock on you, Haaland could be benched when you've triple captained him.
That would be
And
that's my worst nightmare.
it's going to happen. And people were losing their hair last season because of Pep Roulette, right? And Arteta has started to do it. Like if you're holding on to Ramsdale at the start of the season, I mean, you look a little silly now, but there's no way to know what was going to happen with the
Exactly.
goalkeeper situation. So that's one piece. The second piece is, do you understand the actual mechanics of the game? When to play a wild card? Like there's a ton of data on this, like how to build it up. Is it better to have five at the back or five at the middle or two up top? Like, what's your likelihood? This is all like a probability game, right? It becomes like understanding the hands of poker. And once you understand the hands of poker, then you can really play the game and you can start to guess. I can look at your makeup and think, based on what this league is doing, I feel comfortable playing with four defenders. Actually, I should be more attacking this week versus not.
Yeah, no, I feel it because that's the kind of decision I made this weekend. I was like, I need more defenders this week. So I brought in 4 defenders, and I should have brought in
Who
5
did
if
you?
I'm
Who
honest.
did you do a wild card?
No, 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 no. I am. I've been balancing my team very well so far. Although I've been taking hits. I need to listen to you now. I'm going to be monitoring my transfers. I lost a -4, but that was because Estupinian got injured,
Yes,
and
yes, I remember that.
he was already the most transferred player out. And
Mhm.
having seen that, I knew his price was just going to plummet. And I was like, I need to get him out before he becomes 4.9 or something like that, because he's going to
Oh,
be out
I'm
for like a month.
I'm looking at your team. So you kept faith in Morris. Was that after the Luton double game week?
So I kept him because of double game week, and I anticipated Saka playing. I wasn't sure. I just wanted to keep him on.
Mm,
But
mm.
what I should have done is that I should have brought in Kufal as a first defender, as a first substitute.
You left 5 points on the bench there. Eh? That would have been a big game changer
Yeah,
for you.
yeah, that would have been something. I also
Yeah,
thought Son would do
yeah.
something, but
That's so Son captures the problem with the new fantasy, as I call it.
mm,
All of us, because there is an element of luck or gambling to this game.
yeah.
We're all chasing the last, whatever the last hit was, right? So if the roulette wheel was black, everyone's like, okay, we got to do black. If the
Mhm.
roulette wheel was black even, you're like, okay, black, I have to do a black even. And so what happens, like, I looked at Son, especially after that hat trick,
Yeah,
especially I think Sterling had blanked that week, the week that Son had that amazing game.
yeah,
He was playing out of position, right? He was playing like more as in a centrally attacking role.
yeah.
And my thinking was, hey, is this going to be A, repeated? B, is it going to work against different defenses? And my take of Ange Ball is, if you watch them a little bit, he
Yeah.
changes the formation and where he plays player, i.e., out wide on the wing versus in a more central position, based on the defense he's expecting to come up against. And so it was a happy accident with Fulham. Was it going to be repeated? And then the second part of the question, you can say, yes, I'm going to take that bet. The second part of the question is, what do I have to give up to bring that guy in? Am I doing hits? Have I been sitting on an underperforming asset for a while that's about to come good? And I'm giving that up because that would have been my temptation, right? To ship Sterling out, and then it still wouldn't be enough. So I'd have had to ship Sterling and maybe like a Wow Pedro. And then all of a sudden you're -4 points and Son is blanking. And then you're now suddenly 20 points behind when you would have been maybe 10 points.
Suddenly in the hole.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
No,
Like any good gambler.
you know, I had to get rid of Rashford. Rashford had been in my team. I just kept faith in him because I just kept hoping that Manu would turn it around. And I was like, this guy's just losing value every week. And Son kept increasing in value. So I was like, okay, I'm just done. This was my last week with him. And so I waited for the Liverpool game and I just had to bring him in.
Yeah. I mean, so people have been having, I was looking at actually a chart yesterday of the most underperforming assets
Yeah.
in FPL. Jackson's up there. Bruno Fernandes is up there. Rashford is up there. And the point this guy, these fantasy football influencers, if you want to call them that, the
Yeah.
point the guy was making was they're due to come good. Like if they're not injured or like they're not going to have, it's possible that they'll have a really bad season and Rashford will just haul, I don't know, 50 points for the whole season. But an asset like Rashford is due to come good. The question is, how long can you stomach it, right? This is like the stock market. You've put your little 100,000 shillings. It's gone down to 20,000. You're like, shit, should I sell now? Or should
Yeah.
I
Or do
keep
I hold?
holding? Or do I hold? The minute you sell, you've locked in your losses, right? So
That's true.
I think Rashford will come good. The question is just like when and how far behind are you at the point that he does, where it's like maybe not even worth it.
Yeah. And that's what I decided. I was just like, now let me just jump on this one bandwagon. And well, mainly because I really wanted to get Salah, but the math isn't mathing right now. I I need to get two free transfers and then you lose another -4 to make just to bring Salah. I need to like a -4 and 2 transfers. So
You've played your wild card already?
no. I'm holding it. I don't feel like I need to use it just now.
Because that would be one way to bring Salah in, right? Would be via wild card.
I know, but I like my team. I like it. The
Yeah.
midfield, it makes sense to me, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Let's give it like 2 more weeks and then I'll know for sure how I'm really, really feeling about this.
Yes. One of the lessons I've had, I was looking at my performance. I've been playing fantasy, as you know, because I'm in your other league, the Premiers.
Yeah.
Um, I've been playing fantasy since 2017.
Okay.
In 2017, my total haul was 1592. And
Okay.
every year, the year after was 1600, 1700. The year after that, 2020, 1900. 2021 was flat, 1900. 2022, I started to actually understand what I was talking about before. It's not just
Yeah.
about what's happening on the field, it's understanding like how the game is structured, the bonus points, the wild card, when to use them, how a midfielder performs and is rewarded versus a defender. And when I got that, I jumped 400 points. So I went from 1978 in 2021 to 2,367 points.
Well
And this
done.
season I'm at 520. So sorry, not to toot my own horn. I'm not tooting my horn at all. It was just more maybe for other managers it'll be helpful. Once you understand that second piece, then you start to click, right? You understand the game, which we
Yeah.
all love. It's why we're doing this. Then you understand how this game here works, fantasy game. And then the third thing, which is what this season is teaching me, is patience, man. It's patient. It's like Salah was performing. Beumo is another one who started strong, has been blanking. Pedro had the 1 week he had a return, he was on my bench. But you have to be patient. These are all good assets. And patience also means your resistance to chasing the trend, right? Like there'll be a player on a hot streak 1 week, ridiculous results. 2 weeks, 1 week he has a hat trick. The week after, an assist and a goal. The week after that, he scores again. You're like, oh my goodness, I need to get this guy in. But what you don't know is you're chasing someone on a purple patch, right? So you're going to get him, and you buy the asset right at the top,
Yeah.
which is the opposite of good investing, and then you just ride it all the way down, and then you have a couple of blank weeks, and you're like, okay, I got to sell him, and then rinse and repeat. So I'm trying very hard to find, like, Salah should not go anywhere. Sterling, I have hope in. Trippier is an excellent asset.
Oh my goodness, he's
Areola,
the best.
Trippier last season that was the guy who helped me understand how valuable defenders can be, right?
Yeah.
Saliba is excellent.
Mm.
Rodri's another one I'd put in that, like, I don't care if he's hold or not hold. I actually don't even know what his totals are this season.
Yeah.
He's gonna come good. So maybe that's my free tip to all your listeners. Bring in Rodri and just wait patiently for the harvest.
Okay. So if managers are struggling, you'd say be patient, bring
Yeah.
in Rodri.
Well, be patient and bring in quality assets. If you're patient on assets that are destined to underperform, and
Yeah.
there's ways to look at quality assets. Expected points is a great way. It's not the problem with expected points is people look at those charts before the game week. Expected points for this game week, Haaland 9.5, and then Haaland brings in two, and they're like, "Well, this thing doesn't work." It's
Yeah.
not that it doesn't work. It doesn't work in like one instance. You have to look at it over time. So if you look at expected goals or expected points over the season, you'll see some very clear performers. Expected clean sheets, you'll see some very clear performance, like who's going to win the Golden Glove. It's been the same keeper for the last 2 seasons, I think. So you want to look for high quality assets,
So
and then you want to give them the room to run.
so you're basically saying have a big picture mindset
Yes.
towards it. Don't
Yes,
make any
correct.
like sudden decisions unless of course there's an injury or like a red card or something
That's
like
right.
that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Patience. The opportunistic buys feel amazing, right? Because you're like, you feel like a genius. You're like, geez, I've got one over the house. Like I brought in Son, whoever transferred in Son the week before he had his hat trick,
Yeah.
and there were some who captained him. They must have been like, my goodness. And by the way, Son is another excellent quality asset.
He
Like
is.
he's very, very strong. But if you're just chasing his form, then when he starts to blank, you'll know that you're playing opportunistically. Because when your player starts to blank, when they give you your return, you're like, yes. When they start to blank, you're like, get them out of here. And that's where you're not playing strategically.
I
I'm
feel
very
like
worried I'm going to jinx my run with all of this pontificating. That after
no,
all
no,
of
no, no.
this,
This is why
I'm
you're
going to
here.
start to
There's a
fall.
reason you're here. This is not like some elective thing. You have earned this position. You're here because you have done the thing, you have walked the walk, and this has been a TED talk. I feel like I've learned a bit about investing just now.
Well, I mean, the other thing, and this is it'll be funny. We should come back at the end of the season. The other thing I would say, and this is a warning to myself: the season is long. The season is long. I remember when Arsenal was leading through Christmas and we thought this is it, we're going to take this thing, it's ours.
Yeah.
We were leading the longest streak at the top of the table without actually winning the Premier League was my team, Arsenal. So I don't want to do an Arsenal here, lead the whole way and then stumble at the end.
So I take it you're an Arsenal fan.
I have loved Arsenal since the summer of 1998.
So you came in with
And
Canu and Henry and
yeah, that actually, the way I fell in love with Arsenal was I was actually in France. There's a few of us who went from different schools to do an
we were
exchange
together. What are you
program.
talking about?
You were there. You were there. I was just about to say, I think you were there.
Yeah, that's how we
You
met.
were there, of course.
We stayed in the same house.
Oh my God. You'll forgive my memory because as we're now becoming old men, that was 25 years ago. 25
Man,
years ago.
Don't out us like this, man.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that makes me feel old.
Yeah,
But
it was
that
me,
summer,
you,
okay,
Timothy,
so
and Ivan.
that's right. Ivan was there. Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So we'll get off the pod and talk about that.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. Nash, I
Focus
forgot about that.
back on schedule.
We were in the same house, but that summer, remember it was the World Cup, and remember we used to go watch the World Cup games, and France was having their fairy tale run,
Yes.
but another team was having a fairy tale run. It was Croatia. They had
Yes.
no business being there. No
Yeah.
business. I think it was their first game or their first World Cup ever, or at least since the end of the war.
Yeah, it had been a while.
And they just kept going and going, and they were the dark horse and the underdog, and they had no business being there. And there was a player called Davor Suker.
Yes.
And he ended up winning the Golden Boot. He carried the team on his back. I was like, that's always been I always have this love story with underdogs, people who are not supposed to be there, who are doing things they're not supposed to do. And I fell in love with that team. And then Davor Suker joined Arsenal. And I think at that point I was like, okay, no, that's my team. My team is now Arsenal. I mean, now I don't want to say my age because you can do some reverse math there. But from that time, I fell in love with Arsenal.
You know, that's the summer I started watching football. I wasn't a football fan until that summer, and that's how I became a Barcelona fan for different reasons. But it's interesting how that same trip brought us football together.
What are the Barcelona reasons? I'm very curious.
So around that time I got back home, and now I was like, I love this football thing. This is amazing. I hadn't gotten it before, but now I'm like, football's amazing. So then I started watching this show called European Football Show. And Louis van Gaal was the manager of Barcelona at the time. And at that time, Barcelona was hot and cold. So they would go and win like 7-3, and then they lose 3-1. But every time they won, it was just spectacular. And I was like, wow. And then there were all these names that I had heard before from video games.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay, I think I like these guys. And I just became a fan like that.
I mean, if you think about our ecosystem, right? We had those types of TV shows. By the way, let's not underestimate them. There was the European one. There's another one called World Soccer. There was the Premier League Roundup. So we had those on TV, right?
Football made in Germany.
On TV. Football. Oh my gosh. Oh, you've taken me back. Oh, that's very dangerous. What you did there, you took me back to like 1980s. Football made in Germany. So we had that. And then we had this FIFA ecosystem. Right? If your childhood was like mine, all the guys at school would meet and play FIFA, and we would play and play and play until we couldn't play anymore. So we're really primed to end up where we are now, 20-something years later, talking about the Premier League for our fantasy teams.
Facts. Yeah. Now, looking at your team, who has been the biggest surprise, by the way? Who has been like the biggest overperformer? Who's the biggest underperformer? Who do you regret bringing into your team?
You are asking some very interesting questions. You know, Turner, let's just talk about goalkeepers for half a second.
Okay.
Turner has been a headache for me because every time I bench him, like last week, he performs, right? He'll bring 6 points, 5 points. But this is actually a very good, if I don't belabor the point, this is a very good exercise in patience with assets. So it feels that way. You know, when you ask me who's the biggest surprise, it's been Turner. Like he played versus Chelsea, brought 5 points. Played versus Crystal Palace last week, brought 6 points. And I'm feeling this itch. I'm like, I should really bring him in. I should bring him in permanently, give him a run in the side. But he has 24 points, and I'm looking in real time. Let's look at Areola, who's my starting keeper. Areola has 33. Granted, one of those is from an outstanding performance with Chelsea in the second week, where he had 10 points. But overall, the week before last versus Sheffield United, he had 6. It still makes more sense to stay with Areola versus Turner, even though I am feeling like, oh, geez, I wish I should play my bench boost soon to give Turner a run in the side. That's who's been really good. My disappointment has been Joao Pedro. He is now on the verge of being rotated out. It's been frustrating because the times he's hauled, I've had him on the bench. But also when I've had him playing or he's come on as my first sub, he's just not performed. He's brought in 1 point, 2 points, 2 points versus Newcastle, a point versus West Ham. But he's had 2 outstanding game weeks, right? One versus Man United, one versus Luton for 7 points. And he's also at a very, very good price point. He's at 5.3. So if you go and look at who's performing as a forward at the 5.3, sort of in that space, I don't know that we have a lot of very good options, right? Then you start to go down to like Morris, who you have, Edouard from Crystal Palace. I don't understand. This is the other rule for me, and it's a key rule of investment as well. It's funny because this is just an investment game that we're playing. We're investing in assets. Mm-hmm. I don't invest in assets I don't understand. Like Edouard is an excellent example. Edouard for Crystal Palace,
he's like Bitcoin.
That's right. I'm like, it's going up, but no one can explain why. Like, I need someone to sit and hold my hand and be like, why is this guy so good? Because it's a long season. Mateta is another one. Like the Crystal Palace setup, I know Roy Hodgson is doing a job there, but I don't watch enough of their games. I don't understand how they play. If I were to bring in a Crystal Palace asset, I am just clout chasing. I'm chasing what I've heard. I don't understand those teams. Okay. Newcastle on the other side, I love Ed Howe. I actually really liked him from Bournemouth when he was a Bournemouth coach. And Isak is like, I don't know. The problem with Isak is minutes, right? That's the other thing that impacts this. And this is when I started to understand this game, how important expected minutes are. If Haaland is getting rotated out, there's no point having him because, yes, he'll haul, but he has 50 minutes or 55 minutes to do the job.
Yeah. Huh. It's interesting you talk about Crystal Palace because I've watched like 2 of their games. And when they had Olise and Eze both fit, they were amazing. And Mateta turned into Ronaldinho in the games I watched him play.
That's right.
He was just having like assists off the back of his shoulder. He's cutting everybody. I'm like, Mateta? In fact, I was thinking that next season I'm just going to name my team Hakuna Mateta, you know?
Oh, that's a genius name. Stolen.
No, because it's wild.
Yeah.
And I know what you're saying. Like, for example, Wolves.
Yes.
Neto and Juan.
Yes.
This season, Juan has already equaled the goal tally he had last season.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wolves are weaker on paper by any way you want to measure it, but they're performing well.
They're performing well. If you don't have Huang now, this is actually distilled. It crystallizes what we're saying into a. He's outperformed last season. So the impetus, the desire, is to bring him in now, right? It's like, geez, I gotta get on this guy. What is the likelihood that he's gonna double next season? Because then that's the upside that's left for a manager who brings in Huang. I was looking at him. Wolves again. I don't rate them. I don't. West Ham is a team I like and respect. If we're talking about mid-table teams, Everton's another example. Terrible, struggling, but Calvert-Lewin looks like he might be interesting. And so you have to allow yourself, I think that's the other thing, you have to allow yourself 1 or 2 assets that a Huang, a Calvert-Lewin, a Mateta, that if they don't haul, you're not upset. You're like, look, you can sit on my bench, you can be a first sub, and I don't mind if you don't haul in the short term. You're there to, I'm giving you some space to breathe. And you set it's just like investing, really. That's what they call a stop loss. If this guy blanks for 8 weeks, okay, at 8 weeks, sell the asset. It's done. Like, I don't care what it does after. That's its own business. But that's my stop loss. I can't give up that real estate for that long.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
That's how I think about it. I think the game is so much more fun when you understand the assets that you're bringing on, right? Like, You have a chance to watch them. And I don't watch, like, if it's, come on, if it's like a Luton versus West Ham, that's not going to be the game I'm going to watch
Fair.
necessarily. I'll see the highlights. But if Crystal Palace is playing Man City, Olise is a great asset that you mentioned. I saw him even last season. I was like, who is this kid?
Yeah.
We'll see. Ansu Fati is another one. If he gets time at Brighton, if he gets actual expected minutes, that would be a very smart one to bring in. Maybe on the bench, start on the bench. But if I have Wow Pedro, why shouldn't I have Ansu Fati?
It's true. You're right.
Yeah.
So you said you're an Arsenal fan, right? How do you balance between heart and logic?
For team selection,
Yes.
there's no balance. It's 100% logic. It's head. It's all head.
Oh,
Actually, it's funny you say that because I'm looking at my Arsenal squad, my current team. I only have two players from Arsenal, Saka and Saliba.
yeah.
I think if an asset is hauling, then you're welcome to stay, regardless of. I mean, as I said before, I need to understand your team, how you set up, how you play, what your alternates are, because every team has a primary setup and then an alternate depending on who they're playing. Except for Man City, who changes, like, they must have 15 different setups. But most teams sort of play and look the same way. I need to understand that. And then from there, I need to understand sort of your opponent as well, right? Like a little bit about your opponent. And then from there, I can sort of try and guess how you're going to set up. But for Arsenal, me watching the games on the weekend is just, that's pure heart. And obviously, I have one eye on live FPL to see my live rank. For team selection, it's just head. So I'm actually heavier Man City than I am Arsenal right now.
Yeah. I think most of us are. It's just it's just
Yeah.
trying to figure out who is the third player. So I've gone for like Edison and then Haaland and Alvarez because Alvarez is shooting up this season.
I'm telling you what I really want to do, and I hope God will give me the courage. I want to sell Haaland because then the game gets really interesting.
It
If
becomes
you
more
have the
fun.
courage, it becomes more fun. You can do more interesting. You can strengthen literally every line of your team. You can get a better goalkeeper, stronger the premium defense. Like you can get a Rolls Royce defender, Rolls Royce midfielder, and maybe like a Toyota Corolla forward. But that's fine because you keep Alvarez, who's going to continue to haul, and you can just make the rest of the line stronger. This guy, I think this is actually a stat I'm going to look up after we're done talking, is return versus price. Like,
Yeah.
how much are assets bringing back? Actually, that's the one cut of data I haven't seen. How much are assets returning based on their price? And then you equalize it. And I bet you Holland is probably producing as much as, like, definitely less than Salah. Salah has hauled, I think, every game week. Is that the stat?
Yeah.
He hasn't gone a
Salah
game week without hauling. Oh, okay. He blanked against Tottenham. He had one, but he's been doing great.
he has an assist or a goal every week, except
That's
one
right.
game week he
Except for
blanked.
Tottenham. Yeah, game
Yeah.
week 7. He
Yeah.
had no goals, no assists.
Wow. So now,
Yeah.
random question.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about fantasy is that I guess the reason we love it is because it's unpredictable. So I look at your team and it's very first 11 heavy. How do you plan for the uncertainty that is inevitable? Like, for example, with Asaka, I'm looking at your bench now, you have Baldock and Sar.
And Baldock is injured, I think.
Yeah, he's injured. He's not playing
Yeah.
next week.
Yeah, that's right. And his
So
price went down. He's at 3.9.
is it going to be like 3.9 now? I don't even know how much
Yeah,
he is.
he's at 3.9. You can't sell him for anything.
So like now, yeah, and this brings my question into light. Like, for example, I've gone for like more of a balanced thing, but it doesn't help me if your good players are not getting points on the bench. But then the alternative is like I look at your team and I'm like, so is the strong 11 the way to go? Is that what you think? Is that like your position?
I think first of all, that's a very excellent question. I like it. I think the strong bench becomes more important as the season wears on, right? Early in the season, you're not expecting, like, if a player is getting your threat is really around expected minutes, right? But more from a tactical lens. It's not so much injury. Though, to be fair, I started the season with Timber. Timber was one of my starting defenders, and I had to rotate him out right away
Oh yeah,
because
that
he
was
got
unfortunate.
injured. Yeah, I had high expectations for him. because I watched him in preseason. But early on in the season, you're expecting people to really perform. It's almost like it's the start of the race. You're not expecting people to pull up injured. I think as the season evolves and as we continue to have international breaks, European Cup competitions, like League Cup competitions, and the games start to mount, then injury risks become extremely important. And you're absolutely right. Like prudent bench management becomes even more important. And that's why you want to start to shift the mix, right? So that it's more like high quality across the squad. Right now, I have no issues carrying a Baldock. He hasn't played for me. He hasn't done anything. He's been drafted as the lowest price point to sit on the bench. That's his job. It's a bit like me in high school.
So he's doing exactly what you brought him for.
That's it. If Baldock is playing, it means something has gone disastrously wrong in my main starting 11, right? Like I don't know this guy. It's actually the one place where I'm going against everything I've said before. I don't know him. I've never seen him play. I know nothing about him.
You can't pick him out of a lineup.
I would not be, if the guy came up and shook my hand, I wouldn't know who he is. So I've put him. I drafted him because he's cheap and he can sit at the far end of the bench with very low risk of actually coming on to play. And as we're talking about him, I don't think he's played. I don't think he's played this season. No, he's played twice. Once versus Everton, once versus Man City. No, he's played 3 times. But the last 4 game weeks, he's not he's not played. He's had 0 minutes. This is danger. You're right. It's danger. It's not a good use of the bench. But early in the season, that's a risk I'm willing to take to free up some funds for the rest of the squad.
To have a strong start.
And then exactly, to have a strong start. Because I think one thing with this game, I don't know. Actually, I'm curious. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think it's easier to maintain a lead than to catch someone up. That's my working theory. I'm not sure. What do you think?
My theory is that people give up on fantasy too quickly. They take losses too personally. And once they get shaken up, they start making bad decisions. Mm-hmm. And so your job is to just be steady. Just keep doing the things you're supposed to do and watch people panic and then just pass them.
How has that been working out? I'm very curious.
It's usually a tactic that works from January because people tend to give up in December. Well, not really give up, but they lose focus because December comes, parties begin, the games come very fast.
Focus is lost. There's double game weeks. You don't even know.
Exactly. Games get postponed. The cups mess up the schedules. Suddenly you have 6 players who are not playing, and then you lose heart because you've already used your free hit in like August.
That's right.
And now you're seeing somebody else hasn't used their free hit, and then it's like Son, who they captain, and you couldn't bring in Son, and then they get like 60 points, and then you're like, shit.
That's right. I'm done.
Yeah,
after this.
like screw this game.
It's like rage quitting in FIFA. When you're 3-0 down at halftime, you just turn off the PlayStation.
Yeah, like, disconnect the internet. Say,
that's right.
Oops.
That's right. Yeah.
And so it's tricky, and I think that's where now you have a fall off from the people who are serious and the people who aren't. And then now from that point on, I think the people at the top, injuries begin to take effect. Cup games begin to happen. The better teams start reaching the final stages of these competitions. Yeah. And then that's when you start to have these differentials of like, Bayern Munich are playing Man City, and so Haaland is playing 30 minutes.
That's right. Then it becomes a more strategic game, right? Because you have to start to think about like that's the whole point. You have to start to think if Man City are playing Haaland and if Man City are playing Bayern, and let's say they're also in the FA Cup, and let's say they also have a double game week. Then squad rotation and your bench, the depth of your bench becomes super important. The margins aren't big. It feels big now because it's early. It's like, we're 40 points back. There'll be 40-point swings later in the season. Like it will be going back and forth for 40 points.
That's for sure. That's for sure. And one of the things I'm wondering about, in a past interview, I was talking to Mr. 100, as he likes to be referred to.
That's right.
And One of the things he said, which I found interesting, is that he said this season, more than any other, is a midfielders league. And so he was of the opinion that most managers should really focus on having five good midfielders,
Mhm.
possibly Haaland, and then whatever. How do you view the league? Do you agree with that statement or do you
Yeah,
have a variation?
that's no, that's actually such an astute observation, right? Because I'm trying to think of a second example. We've used Son as an example. Son is he's classified as a midfielder, but he's been playing through the middle, right? He's been playing almost as a striker.
Yeah,
Rashford is another one who's been playing out of sort of he's a midfielder but playing in a striker like role.
yeah,
Rodri is a third, right?
yeah,
Like a classified as a midfielder playing through the middle. So these are literally striking assets, but with they're playing like forwards, but they're classified as midfielders, right? So there's a huge opportunity. That's hey, Mr. 100, you are 100% correct. Yes, yes, yes. And so if you're really ballsy manager, right? You want to go overweight because there's premium defenders or like there's premium assets, like luxury assets like a Haaland, Salah is another one, Van Dijk is another one. And then there's some of these more pedestrians, and you need both in your team. You can't have luxury all the way across. That's the cost constraint. So I think concentrate your luxury assets in the middle plus Haaland to the extent that you can. And as I say that, I look at my team, and that's what I've done, right? Saka, Sterling, and Salah in the middle,
yeah.
Haaland up top, and Alvarez. I'm going to be willing, and as you can tell which way I'm leaning. I need to make a change in the forward line. I want to wait until the Christmas break to see how Haaland and Alvarez perform,
Yeah.
but it's killing me to have Alvarez because it's denying me a lot of luxury assets elsewhere on the team.
To have Alvarez or Haaland?
Sorry, Haaland, the 14 million pound Haaland. Alvarez, I kind of want to keep. I want to keep him. I think he's an exciting prospect.
Yeah, he's perfectly priced.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. His price point it makes sense. Haaland's doesn't at 14. Well, let's just wait. I mean, famous last words. Everyone who's counted this guy out has been counted out, right? So,
It's true.
we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Haaland. You just can't bet against him.
That's his career. He's like, bet against me, I'll haul a hat trick. I think the guy's got two more hat tricks in him this season.
Oh yeah, that's for
So
sure. That man, he's so young. He's got so much unfulfilled potential. And once
yeah,
like Rodri comes back, and then De Bruyne comes back, oh, and then Man City
that's
start
right.
firing on all cylinders,
It's
and then they
over.
become that
What's
oiled
the
machine. We're done.
That's it. That's it. Because the thing with Haaland, the way he plays very few touches, right? He
Yeah,
can go with 13 touches in a game, which is, if you think about it, is insane. It's like, I mean, the goalkeepers have more touches than him. He'll be the outfield player with the least touches across both teams. The problem is, or the opportunity is, with two of those touches, he'll score. And so you have to just say, like, I can't count this guy out. I'm going to continue to keep him
yeah.
until he gives me a good reason not to.
You said you've used your triple captain.
Yes, I did. I did. Yeah, that was a stroke of very, very good luck. Yeah, I
Very
did.
well done. It got you 60 points. I mean, that's a perfect use of it.
Yeah, yeah, that was. I mean, so look, this is what I think over the whole of the game, right? You're going to have breaks like that, and you'll also have. I transferred out Mitoma. I was thinking. I brought in Rice. It goes both ways, right? So I'm looking at my triple captain week. I had 95 points that week. I triple captained Haaland, which was fantastic. So lucky. If you look at the rest of the team, I had nothing. I had nothing. It covered over the weakness across the rest of the team. Trippier had one. I had Chilwell. By the way, Chilwell is another asset we should do a whole other pod on because I had a very high hopes for him. I had to transfer him out with the injury. That was one I was going to hold for a while. Saliba had two. Stupinan had two. Like the rest of the team, I would have
Yeah.
had something like 30 points, maybe. Yeah, exactly. I would have had 35 points with the rest of the team. But that triple captain of Haaland, it first of all, it rocketed me up the standings and then it
Yes.
covered up a lot of weakness. That was the point I said, okay, I need to get rid of Chilwell. I need to reconsider Estupinan. I need to think about Mitoma. And sure, the way this game goes, once I got Mitoma out, he went and hauled, I think, 13, 15 points that week. But I'm happy to take that L. I'm happy to take that L.
Well, you see the thing about like Brighton's defense. I don't know if you've seen the stats. They have conceded 16 goals in the Premier League this
That's
season.
that's right. Yeah. So they have a terrible defense. But then the thing with the stupid, and this is again, when a defender scores or has an assist, it just counts for more. And
It
a
does.
Estupiñán is he's always remember when Arsenal scored that Man City goal, and
Yeah.
even the commentator was surprised. Here's Tomiyasu. Like, what's he doing up there?
Yeah.
That's how Estupiñán plays, right? He's always so far advanced. He plays like he plays like a classic winger. He's all the way up and he's always whipping in crosses. But after a few blanks, I said, okay, enough. I'm done rolling my dice with this guy.
No, that's fair. I mean, the only reason I got rid of him was because of the injury. But I was also struggling with him because every time I didn't have him, he would provide an assist. And then him and Mitoma have this good chemistry. So when
Yes.
Mitoma is on, Estupiñán is on. It just goes that way.
Yeah. I want to go back to the triple captain question that you asked me.
Yeah.
If I still had it, you know what I would have done? I would have played it for the Luton double game week on Morris. I would look for double game weeks for teams playing against with a good striker, for teams with a good striker playing against teams that have concede a lot of goals. So if Brighton's playing against, I don't know, if there's a double game week over Christmas, that would be the place where you could. And then that's why I'm saying the league is so open. If people are still sitting on triple captains, you do that, you get 40 points. All of a sudden, you're like 5 points behind me, right? And then it's a very different game, right?
Mhm.
So positioning at this point doesn't mean anything.
So do you think you'll be using your wild card or the free hit anytime soon?
I'm saving those again as fatigue starts to set in, injuries start to get heavy. My wild card, I'm trying to hold as close to game week 19 as I can before I use it. I've been tempted many, many times.
Yeah.
But I want to get deeper into this first half of the season. The other thing is the advice with the patience is patient, but carry a long big stick, right? Talk softly, but carry a big stick. When it's not working, cut quickly. Don't hold on a game week beyond what you're supposed to. By game week 12, game week 13, game week 14, signs are there of a good season or not a good season.
Oh, yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, from the group leader and team leader and point leader, just overall leader, what insights have you gleaned so far over these 8 weeks that you would share with us?
There's a few. Not to belabor the patience piece, I think that's a big one. Buy high quality assets, be patient with them. That's 100% the first thing. 2, there's hidden opportunities. If you're patient, if you put your nose to the grindstone, you have to, there's little signals of upcoming formation changes. Anytime, I'll give you a perfect example. There's a few coaches who are on death watch, right? We're not sure if they're going to survive. Heckingbottom, I think is his name,
Yeah,
is
Sheffield.
one at Sheffield. They're playing horribly. There's things like that. So when a new coach comes in, implements a new system, an asset that was underperforming can burst into life. There's also the transfer window in January to be really thoughtful about. Like Ivan Toney is coming back, and that's we're talking about premium assets. That would be Ivan Toney plus Alvarez would be a good replacement for Haaland if you want to be ballsy.
Mm.
The other thing I've been thinking a lot about is fixture density. Like double game weeks are going to start piling up, and those double game weeks offer unique windows to triple or quadruple your haul based on how you play your team. But overall, my number one takeaway is just to be patient with yourself, with your team, with your assets. Make good decisions at the outset. Research carefully. Be very, very slow to buy an asset, but be very quick to like give them the time that they need to perform. And when they reach whatever limit you've set for them of non-performance, be quick to cut. Be like, we're done.
Okay.
You're not performing for the way I've set up.
Okay. Now, looking forward to game week 9. Are there any changes you're going to make? Are there people you're looking to bring in, or are you cutting anybody?
You guys are just gonna steal my my approach here, eh? So Man City is going up versus Brighton, which we've already talked about, right? Like how open Brighton is in defense, or how leaky the defense is. I think there's unique opportunities there.
Haaland captain?
Chelsea's going up. Oof, oof. I don't. Liverpool's going up versus Everton. I expect Salah to haul there. I expect Salah to hold, but yeah, this is the conundrum that will exist as long as Haaland is in the Premier League. Because the minute you don't captain him, he's going to score four, right?
Yeah.
I think to answer your question for upcoming game week, I'm looking at the team that I have set out right now. I need more Newcastle. I'm interested in Newcastle assets if I can get some. Probably a Haaland captain, let's be honest. I trust the assets that I have. I've got good quality assets. Like at the back, I really like Trippier. Cash, I'll be very honest and open with you. That's me. This is me not following my advice. I've not watched this guy play. Everyone is raving about him, and I needed to make a transfer, so I brought him in for a stupid nod. But I don't know if I'll live to regret that or not.
You only had really two choices, either him or Kufal.
That's it. But I don't know these guys. So
Okay,
I don't like buying guys I don't know.
fair.
Big Dan Burn scored his first Champions League goal. I'm excited about him. Isak, I really like. So no big changes. I will say from a midfield perspective, Beumo is on watch list. I'm watching him carefully in terms
Mhm.
of if he continues not to haul. I'd
He's on
like to
thin
do a
ice.
switch and yeah, he's on very thin ice. I'd love to bring in Rodri, which means I'd have to give up a Man City asset. So it's shaping up like if I think about my wild card, it's shaping up to what I'd want to do for that transfer.
Do you have an unpopular football opinion that you'd like to share with us? For example, let me give you mine.
Yeah.
I think, and it could be just general. I
Mhm.
think Mbappe should have gone to Al Hilal or wherever he was, whichever team offered him money, he should have gone. $750 million is $750 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
And whether Mbappe stayed in PSG or not, PSG will win the La Ligue, I mean Liga, and they will not win the Champions League. And that will leave him in the same position he was in the season before. And
That's
nobody
true.
in this world will criticize somebody for taking 750 million for 1 year. So, do you have any such hot takes?
I I'm going with your hot take, looking for a point of contention, and I'm like, no, no lies detected. I agree with everything you just said. My hot take is the Premier League's days are numbered. I think the Saudi money it's just distorting football in a really poisonous way. And
Mhm.
I think in 20 years, when we're looking back and having this podcast and our league is all VR and AR and we're sitting in the same room virtually, we'll look back and be like, remember when the Premier League was? I think we take it for granted
Yeah.
that it is perennial, it'll always exist in its current form. I think some of the stuff happening with the Saudi money, it's especially when it was cute at the start when it was like guys who are clearly over the hill, like
Yeah.
Ronaldo's going like whatever, it's done. He can go and get his big payday. But when Mane left, I was like, Mane should have just stayed at Liverpool. He had at least 4 or 5 more seasons and
He
retired
did.
as a legend. But these guys, they're starting to get more and more. When Karim Benzema went, this is a guy who just won the Ballon d'Or. Like
Yeah.
this
Like,
is this is I don't know.
yeah, literally, they have the Ballon d'Or winner. Like right now, the
It
current
doesn't make
holding
sense.
Ballon d'Or winner is playing in Saudi Arabia.
And I know it sounds a bit xenophobic. I don't know. I don't know how it sounds actually, but I don't think it's good for football. And maybe it's good that that current thing is being broken up. Maybe it shouldn't all, why should it all be European leagues? Maybe we should have like a world league, whatever. But the way it's happening now
Mm.
and the use of money is going to destroy the game. And we will look back and wonder how we were sitting here twiddling our thumbs as it happened.
Interesting. So, you don't think that England is the current Saudi Arabia, and it's
Yes, right. The sort of post-colonial argument, right? It's like, well, why? How is it different if it's England? Yeah, I agree. I'm open. I mean, I understand, and I think maybe this new thing is breaking it to
mm,
build like maybe we'll have like like instead of having all the players at Arsenal and Chelsea and Liverpool. If you think about it logically, it doesn't make sense. Why is there such a density of talent in one country in one league? It doesn't make a lot of sense. But the problem is, and my real unpopular opinion is the way we broke it open was with money, which
yeah.
means the way we'll put it back together will be with money. And, you know, that just leads to very unfortunate outcomes. And I'm not excited about that.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
One more unpopular opinion. I don't think players should have the time to choose which country they want to play for. I think this thing
Ooh.
of like delaying for as long as you can, waiting to see if you're going to get called up for one country versus another. I think we need to have a player signs like locks in early, because what's happening now is like you want international football, you're Ghanaian British, and you wait to see if you're getting picked by the UK, and then at the very last, very last minute, when it's clear you're not going to play in the UK, you switch to your home country. I think that's
Oh.
just bad for football. It's disrespectful to less powerful teams. Yeah, I would change that if I was head of FIFA.
So then what about like what Spain have done, where they Ansu Fati's blowing up, poop, debut. Lamine Yamal from Barcelona is 16-year-old, youngest debutant for Spain
I
because
mean,
they don't want him to go to Morocco.
dude, imagine if Kenya's whole team was people from Bolivia. You'd be like, this, like, fine, he's Kenyan, but is he? And then you'd start to be like, I don't know. I don't know. It's very nuanced.
No, I
I think
agree.
yeah, it's they're bringing the club mentality to nation, and the whole thing with the nation is that you have some connection to the country you're representing, right? Like
Yeah,
Isak is a great example. Isak I consider Swedish. Like I think he considers himself Swedish. I think
yeah.
Swedish people consider him Swedish. Like he speaks Swedish, he's from there. But like this thing of like Nash is the new big hot property, and all these countries are like, we'll give you citizenship. It's just a weird power imbalance, and it's not good for the game, I don't think. It's not good for the player either.
No, I agree with that. That makes sense.
So maybe not that unpopular.
No, no. I mean, it is unpopular because a lot of people don't want that. They want the choice. Like they want all the
Hmm.
French Algerians to decide to play for France,
Yeah,
unless France doesn't want them, But
exactly, exactly.
it's a system that only benefits the strong nations.
That's exactly it. That's exactly the point. Yep, yep.
Yeah, and so it should be taken away. It should be like, was he born there? No, that's that. Or if there's a strict thing of like his mom or his dad, if they have
That's
that
it.
dual
Exactly,
citizenship, maybe that time.
exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay,
I think you're spot on.
okay. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much.
Yeah, this is great. This
You've
is
been a
great.
great.
Thank you for having me, Nash.
No, thank you. It's been great to talk to you. I've been wanting to talk to you. I was like, when are we
Yeah.
going to talk to this guy? He's always at the top, but he's never number one. And now you are both of those things. And so I get to have an interview with a league leader and the points leader in one swoop. That's amazing.
This is awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Let's do a season recap at the end. We'll see where everything shakes out.
Oh, that would be amazing. And we shall do that.
Yeah, awesome.
All right.
Thanks,
All right.
Nash.
Thank you.
All right. Cheers.